Hi there, welcome to today's session. I'm Jonathan Westerling, Manager of Special Programs for Google's SAS team. Today we're diving into the world of deployments, which is a new and helpful method you can use to organize larger wireless networks. But if you are a Google SAS customer, you'll want to pay attention because everybody currently has at least one deployment. We gave everyone one deployment. So this webinar is going to show you how to use deployments if you want to for larger networks, but also how to work with the one that we've already given you. I'm going to switch to our slide deck here. And that's the most demanding thing I asked my little computer to do, so pardon my computer CPU there. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the deck, and I'm going to get started. As I said, we are talking today about deployments, how to create them and organize them in the SAS portal. We will look at what a deployment is, take a look at the use cases for making use of the new way to organize things. We will also look at the bulk import and bulk signing capabilities of the SAS portal for CBSDs. I'll do a live demo where I show you how all of this works, and at the end I'll recap the help resources we have in place, plus leave time for a little Q&A if anyone has any questions. And if you have questions, the best way to send those along is to post them in the chat on YouTube if you're joining us live. As I mentioned, this video is available on demand after the fact, so you might be watching us not live. You can join us generally on the third Thursday of the month for a live SAS webinar about some feature of Google SAS. So feel free to join us live on the third Thursday at 10 if you'd like to, 10 o'clock Pacific time. Otherwise, if you're watching this on the replay, sit back and let's take a dive into the world of deployments together. Now, what are deployments? A deployment is, as I mentioned, a way of organizing CBSDs. And congratulations, as I said, you, if you are a Google SAS customer, already have at least one deployment. The deployments live as it is under your Google SAS account. So underneath your SAS account is a single deployment. I'll show you how that looks in a minute. And then within that deployment are your CBSDs. And the CBSDs are indicated here by a green triangle. Now we also have something called nodes. And this is a node which also lives under your SAS account. And inside of a node, you can also have deployments. So essentially, we've created these deployments as the thing that holds your CBSDs. And a deployment can either live under your SAS account or inside what's called a node. I'll talk more about nodes in a minute. We can even get more complicated if you want to, because you can have nodes inside nodes. And for some of our customers, they really like to organize things into groups, and so they have multiple nodes. So here we have multiple deployments, each deployment inside a node, those nodes inside another node, but everything living under the SAS account. So this is how you can use deployments, and nodes of course, to group your CBSDs. Now, couple important things to know about deployments. First of all, each deployment has a unique user ID. Whereas before, your SAS account and your default deployment, the deployment we've given you, has your user ID that you were given when you signed up for Google SAS. But now, you can create additional deployments, and each additional deployment has its own user ID that you give it. Now, there's no additional charge for these deployments. They're free with Google SAS, and all the CBSDs in a deployment is currently billed up to the top level SAS account that it's living under. Now, remember, if you want to do multiple deployments, it requires that you create and manage multiple user IDs now, because each user ID in each deployment has to be unique. So remember that if you're considering doing your organizations using deployments, that it means you're going to have to reconfigure your devices with multiple user IDs. Now, as I said, deployments let you create custom groupings, and this is what they look like in the SAS portal. On the left, we have our SAS account here, Google CBRS. Underneath that, we have a node. You can see it with this little icon here. And the deployments are always going to be listed in the middle of the user interface. So here I have 3 deployments listed: East Bay, North Bay, South Bay. And you would use this if you wanted to give specific permissions or, as I said, group your CBSDs into individual markets. Here I've got 3 markets, 3 separate markets, North Bay, East Bay, South Bay. I want to assign different administrators or different CPIs or different editors or different viewers to each one of these geographic areas or markets. And I can do that now with deployments because in addition to having its own user ID, each deployment also can have its own admins, its own CPIs, its own editors, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as of today, anyone assigned as an admin to your SAS account can create a deployment. An admin to the SAS account, remember that's this one right here. So if you have multiple admins to a SAS account, any of them can create their own deployments. But you can add specific admins to each deployment once it's been created to control who has access to those deployments. And I'll show you how to do that later in the demo. Couple of suggestions in terms of deployments. We do suggest that you keep geographic areas with the same user IDs together. With the same user IDs together. So in other words, don't have multiple user IDs in the same geographic area. For various technical reasons, we've sort of figured that that isn't an optimal way to do it. So group things together based on their geographic area. And if you don't need deployments, you'll still need to use the one that we've provided. And that's why you want to stay tuned throughout the rest of this webinar, because you do need to know how to use deployments because, as I said, everybody has at least one. Now, in terms of creating deployments, it's quite simple. You click the New Deployment button. And once you do that, you get the screen that you see over here on the right-hand side of the screen. I'll demo it shortly. You simply create a name for your deployment, and then here we have a field for the user ID. And it is really important when you're creating the deployment to get this user ID right. Think about what it is and put it in correctly because it has to be unique, and you can't change it afterwards. So once you've put this together, you click Create, and the deployment will appear in your Google SAS account or in the node if you're creating it in the node. And remember, only account admins can see the New Deployment button. Now, deployments, like your main SAS account, have their own access control. I was mentioning you have specific admins, CPIs, editors, etc. And this is one of the main reasons that they exist, that deployments exist. To make a change in your in a particular deployment, and this is true for your SAS Google SAS account as well. The steps are: you click the unlock, you unlock it with the little lock icon there. You click the plus button. You choose whether you want the person to be an admin, a CPI, and then you enter their email, and then you click the share button. Once you click the share button, they are approved to be to have that function for either your SAS account or your deployment. And you can remove a user at any time if you're an admin by mousing over their icon and clicking the little X that appears over their avatar. And remember, if you only have a single deployment, to access this screen with the user management screen, you're going to need to click the sprocket in the lower left-hand side of the screen to access that. That's where that lives. Otherwise, it'll be in your list of SAS deployments. Now, I'll show you in the demo the difference between assigning an admin to your SAS account versus assigning an admin for your deployment. I'll do that as part of the demo. Now, one other cool thing we wanted to show you today is you can actually, if you have multiple deployments, you can still view your CBSDs across all of your deployments at once if you want to. When I click on a SAS account or a node on the left-hand side, here I've clicked on Google CBRS, I'm going to be able to see all of, when I click on the Open button, I'm going to be able to see all of the deployments which are listed here in the deployment list. So you can still, even though we've given you deployments, you can still see all of your CBSDs, every single one of them if you want to, by clicking on your SAS account. Or you can see all the ones in a node by clicking on the node and then opening that. Or you can see only the CBSDs in a particular deployment by highlighting that deployment name, then clicking the Open button. So, and again, I'll show this all in the demo how this works so you can see it happening in real time. A word about nodes, because I mentioned the word nodes earlier and I showed you that icon. You'll see it again in the demo. Nodes are essentially like folders on your hard drive, right? You can use them to group deployments together. Now, the one thing to remember about nodes is you can only create nodes currently in the SAS Portal API or by sending an email to sas-support@google.com. So you can't actually create nodes like you can create deployments, right? Anyone who's an admin can create a deployment. For nodes, you either need to use the API or use sas-support@google.com. Just send an email and say, I'd like to have a node, and we'll assign that node for you. But nodes group deployments together. So now you know what nodes are. A couple of other things. I wanted to mention importing, because importing CBSDs into a deployment is a powerful tool that we give you in the SAS portal, and it's been updated now with a new way of mapping the fields. So it's more powerful than it was before. So you can use the SAS portal to create, sign, and update multiple CBSD configurations all in one CSV file. In fact, you can do several hundred at a time. Here's an overview of the steps to do that. We'll actually run through this in the demo. Okay, first you open up the deployment, you click the deployment, click open, then you click the import button, which will appear in the top bar. And what you're probably going to want to do the first time is download the template that's there. And I'll show you that template. Open that template in your favorite spreadsheet program like Google Sheets. And note that columns with an asterisk are required. If there's no asterisk in the column, you can leave that blank. Enter your data for all your CBSD, save that CSV, go back into the SAS portal, click the import button. Select computer, you choose the CSV to actually import that CSV into the SAS portal, and then you get this display that you see here on the right-hand side. This might be the first time many of you are seeing this. You see the property in the SAS portal, and then the label that's in your CSV file. And when you click on each one of those labels, you get a pop-up where you can remap those columns. This is really useful if you have a CSV file that came from another piece of software or some other source that wasn't our template. Now you can just take that CSV file, map the columns that you need appropriately, and then import, or upload rather, that CSV file. And the last step is just uploading. Once you've uploaded the CSV file, the CBSDs are going to appear in your SAS portal. They'll be ready for signing. I will show that to you in a minute. A couple of important caveats to keep in mind with importing. It will skip rows with errors. For example, if you put a letter in the latitude, or if you got a wrong FCC ID, you fat-fingered it, it's just going to skip that row. It's going to continue and import the other items in that CSV file. But remember, when you're done with the import, stop and check the errors. Make sure there were no errors. And open up that error message if you get it, so that you can see the errors that occurred and correct them. And now here's the best part, your pro tip. If you're a CPI, congratulations, thank you for becoming a CPI. And if you're not a CPI, by the way, Google offers CPI training through a partnership with Coursera. You can sign up for that and enroll and become a CPI yourself if you'd like. We welcome you to do that. If you are a CPI, you can use this import function in the SAS portal to bulk sign CBSDs. This is going to make your life much easier if you're working with large deployments. And I'll show you that column in the template that lets you sign CBSDs on import. If you're a CPI, if you're checking that spreadsheet to make sure everything's okay, like you should do as a good CPI, once you've done that, you bulk sign them by entering the signed column, entering yes in the signed column, then all of the CBSDs that you import will be signed and ready for registration. That's huge for some people who've been working with large deployments. Hopefully good news. Now let's jump over to our live demo, and I'm going to bring up our SAS portal. I'm going to create a deployment. I'll import something as well. I'll remind you also, as I'm switching here, more information about deployments is available in our Help Center, support.google.com. Search for CBRS deployments, and it will pop up in the documentation. So I'm going to escape out of this, and we're going to switch over to the SAS portal. Hopefully Hopefully you're all seeing that. Now, here we have my SAS portal. It's empty right now. I'm looking at San Francisco. I'm going to go to the deployments list in the upper left. Now remember, if you've only got one deployment, your deployment will come up automatically. You'll go to this little sprocket here in the lower left. If you have multiple deployments or multiple SAS accounts, you will see something like this. Click in the upper left, click on that SAS portal, bring up the deployments list. I'm going to click on the SAS New Features Demo account. This is one of the accounts here. By the way, this is in our test SAS. We have a separate environment that everyone has access to if they need it to test things. This is not a production environment. I'm not actually configuring real devices here. This is just a demonstration. So in my demo environment here, in my test SAS, I have the SAS New Features Demo account. And you'll notice that I have one deployment. This is the default deployment for the SAS New Features account that was automatically created. The same thing will be true for your account. The deployment listed here in the middle when I click on the account on the left. Here's my deployment. It's called WISP America 21, which may not make a lot of sense for a demo account, but there's a reason that I've left it this way. That's because by default, we named each deployment after the user ID. So you can click on the deployment itself, and you'll notice when I do that, I see information about that deployment on the right-hand side. If I want to rename it something other than the user ID, just click that little lock button, and now I can actually rename this deployment. I can call it main deployment. Okay, relock it, and we're good to go. So now I've changed the name from the default, which is the user ID, into this name that I've selected, main deployment, but you'll notice I can't change the user ID. That's fixed. The user ID can only be changed once you create the deployment. After that, it is locked. You cannot change the user ID. So get in the habit now, since we all have at least one deployment, get in the habit, instead of clicking on your SAS account and opening that, open the deployment in the middle. Click on the deployment in the middle and then click open if you're opening and you want to see your Google SAS account. You only have one. There are reasons that you actually want to make edits and change things in the deployment versus the account itself. Now let me show you one other account which I've activated here. This is the separate SAS demo account. You'll notice that this SAS demo account has underneath it a node. We're talking about nodes. Here's a SAS demo node, and you'll notice when I click and highlight the node, I have a deployment in that node. It's called deployment in node. So that I can show you that when I click on the SAS account itself, I'm seeing two deployments here. I have my default SAS demo deployment and the deployment in the node. That's because when maybe it's straightforward, but maybe I'm just being extra clear so that you're really clear about how this works. When I highlight the account on the left, I see all of the deployments. When I highlight the node, I'm only seeing the deployment that's in that node. That's the key difference here. And again, get in the habit of clicking on the deployment itself and then clicking open to open and manage your deployments, now that everybody has one. Let's do one other thing. Let's add a new deployment. I'll show you how that works. I've got my SAS New Features demo. I'm going to click New Deployment. Here's my new deployment on the right-hand side. I'm going to call it something Webinar Live. And I'm going to think carefully about this user ID because it's going to be unchangeable. I'm going to call it SAS Demo User 42. When I click Create, I now have a new deployment. Actually, I'm going to click the refresh button here. Maybe you didn't even notice this little refresh button here. Click the refresh button, there it is. Webinar Live Deploy, SAS Demo User 42 is my user ID. Now you'll notice I'm already an admin. By default, it gives me admin privileges to that deployment. That's a good thing. But if I want to add new administrators or CPIs, I can do that here. Click the lock button. Here's the plus. I showed you this in the slides before. Type in their email address, decide what you want them to be, and then click the share button. And that's how you add users to a deployment as well. I'll lock things down again, and we will continue here with our demo. If you have questions, you can pop it into the chat. Happy to answer any questions if you're joining us live. If you're joining us after the fact and you're watching this on demand, you can always ask questions to our support team, sas-support@google.com, or check out that help documentation we have at help.google.com, which has all sorts of information about the deployments and how they work. Now I'm going to open up a deployment here, and we're going to look at the import feature. I'm going to demo the import feature before we wrap things up. Here's how import works. I told you, I walked through the steps very quickly in the slideshow, but let me actually demo it here as it happens. Click Import at the top of the screen. I'm going to pause here because I've actually been tripped up by this. If you don't see the Import button at the top of the screen, it means either you're not an admin or you're not managing the deployment, which means you should have clicked on the deployment and then click Open. Once you click on the deployment, then click Open, you should get this Import button if you're an admin on the account. Here's that CBSD template. You can click here to download it. When you download it, it will open up and look like something like this. It'll have all of the columns, and then we've given you one demo CBSD here. And here are all the columns with all of the things that you need, and you know this is a CPI, or if you're an admin and you've been involved in the CBRS environment, that these are all the various things that you need to register a device. Some of them are optional. The ones that are required are listed here with an asterisk. There's the asterisk. So I've put a couple of demo CBSDs here in our template so that I can actually do an import, but you'll notice that I need to change that user ID because the user ID that I just created for that new deployment was SAS demo user 42. So I'm going to actually change these live in the template, and then we're going to import these guys into that new deployment that we just created. I'm going to delete these two rows here because those are the demo. They're not actually part of the 3 CBSDs I'm going to import here. Here are the 3 CBSDs. I'm going to go with the file in Google Sheets, download CSV current sheet. So now I've downloaded that deployments template to my computer. I'm going to flip back into the SAS portal now, and we're going to go back into, let me make sure I'm in the right, oh no, I'm here. It says webinar live deploy. This is definitely the deployment that we created. I see the user ID over here says SAS demo user 42, so we're good to go. I'm going to click import, import from computer. And then in my downloads, here's the most recent one, that template that we just saved as a CSV file. I'm going to click open. Now it's not going to upload it automatically. It's going to pop me into this view here where we can map the columns or the properties in the SAS portal to each column in my CSV file. Now I'm using the template here, so these are all pretty much the same. I don't need to go and check them. But if I was using a CSV file from another source, you might need to go in and remap these to other columns in your CSV. So you'll notice the bottom one here. I told you about that power user tip for CPIs to multiple sign CBSDs. It's this last column here, sign CBSD, yes or no. In this case, I'm not a CPI on this particular deployment, so I've left this as no. So these will be unsigned CBSDs for right now. I'll still need my CPI to go in and sign these. But when I click the upload button in the upper right-hand side of the screen, it's going to go ahead and upload these devices for me. And now it says upload complete. I had no errors. If I had an error come up, I would be able to click on that and actually view those errors. Meanwhile, I've got my CBSDs. What I'm going to do is click the little refresh button here. And when I do that, it's going to actually show me my CBSDs, which I know actually are here in Alabama. Here they are, 3 of them in Demopolis, Alabama. And they were successfully imported into this brand new deployment, which we created together. And that is how it works with deployments and importing deployments into the SAS portal. New feature available to everyone, and everyone has a deployment. So I'm going to pop back into my presentation and mention that we do have our SAS YouTube channel. which has hours of content about SAS and CBRS. Just CBRS in general, even if you're not a Google SAS customer, you can send people who might be considering CBRS to our SAS YouTube channel to learn more. It's great, especially if you like this webinar style learning, and it features various members of the Google SAS team. You can click that red subscribe button, please, if you're watching this. Click subscribe and be alerted to new videos when we add them, new videos like this webinar you're watching right now. So click subscribe and make sure you stay in the know about. Close things out. Thank you everybody for joining us here live for our SAS Features webinar. Hope you learned something about deployments and hope you are able to import your CBSDs successfully. Thanks again for joining us, and tune in a future Thursday. Third Thursday at 10 o'clock is the normal time for these SAS Features webinars. Join us again live or subscribe to our Google SAS YouTube channel to be alerted when new videos are posted. Thanks for being a Google SAS customer, and thanks for joining me. Take care. Have a safe and pleasant rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. Take care.